Programming announcement before we get into today's show. We got special guest on our live show. Today at 6 p.m. Central Time, the face of the franchise, James Skrmetta, is joining us here on Saints Now by Chat Sports. Normally on Wednesdays, we go live at 4 p.m. Central Time, but today we're going live at 6 p.m. Central Time. Going to have a great conversation with James, and then, of course, we're going to open it up to the floor and have a live Q&A. So I hope you guys join, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we will see you live here at 6 p.m. Central Time. Look, I think that the New Orleans Saints should be working on an extension for Chris Olave, and not saying that they should go and sign him to it right this second, but I think that they should be actively working towards saving money so they can pay a player of Chris Olave's caliber. He's a very, very talented guy, and over the course of his early career, he's been a proven 1,000-yard receiver when he is available. In 2024, the tail of the tape was unavailability due to concussions and due to injuries. So for Chris Olave, I want to see him continue to grow and continue to develop on those first two seasons where he had over 1,000 yards. 4 touchdowns in 2022, 5 touchdowns in 2023. You saw the progression, and he got better from his rookie to his sophomore campaign. But in year 3, he was only available for 8 matches. Thus, he was only able to put up 32 receptions for 400 yards and a touchdown. And I think that with Chris Olave, it's important to remember that they picked up his 5th-year option. So that is something to consider when you're talking about the contract for a player like Chris Olave. And coming up, we're going to predict what that extension is going to look like. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit why I think he should be extended, and then we're going to get into the financials here. So I highly encourage you to stick around throughout the duration of this video, because there's a lot of interesting information that I promise you as a Saints fan want to know. And I will start off by saying this: when it comes to extending Chris Olave, it's very, very important to do that, not right now, but in the near future, because he will be a focal point of this offense moving forward. And that's not an opinion that I have. That's not an opinion that Ross Jackson, Nick Underhill, any of these Saints media members have. That is a fact, ladies and gentlemen. And Kellen Moore has expressed that on multiple occasions, but I continue to go back to this quote because I think it says everything you need to know. Chris is a phenomenal player. He's had a huge impact on this team, and he's going to have a huge impact. Kellen Moore saying this back at the NFL owners meetings, and why I want to extend Chris Olave is because I have such high expectations for this player. When he's available, he is extremely dynamic. The control that he has over his body is absolutely amazing. And maybe to a fault, he sacrifices himself to make the play, but you got to commend the player who's willing to give it all and leave it on the field for his team. And Chris Olave, for another reason, should have high expectations, because the wide receiver room around him, although I will say it's not absolute garbage, it's not the greatest wide receiver group that I've ever seen. I mean, I do like Bub Means. I think he can be a good player. I like Rashid Shaheed a lot. That's one of my favorite guys on the roster. Brandon Cooks, although he's a little bit older, I still think he has some gas in the tank. And then the Saints brought in Donovan Peoples-Jones after a successful workout. So for Chris Olave, I think it's important to consider extending him sooner rather than later. Obviously, he is going into year 4, so you don't have to do it yet. You can do this next off season, but I think that you definitely need to consider it, and you definitely need to plan for it this season, the remainder of this offseason, and then, into the future. Now, I want to get your opinions here. Let's put down some cheddar on this one. Chris Olave, the receiving yard line is set at 1,350 yards. That would be the most of his career. Type O for over, type U for under. I'm slamming the over. Now, I'm not the only one who thinks that Chris Olave should be extended. CBS, they recently published an article laying out a bunch of different players that deserve an extension for the New Orleans Saints. They said this on Olave: he has 2 years remaining on his contract, but New Orleans could look to extend the former first-round receiver. When healthy, Olave is an automatic 1,000-yard player, but was limited to 8 games last season due to injury. So long as he's healthy, Olave is one of the brightest young receivers and is only entering his age 25 season. And I do believe that New Orleans is preparing and has been preparing for this move. You can see that based on how they've gone about this offseason. They didn't overpay some massive contracts to some very high-profile players. They didn't go out and search for these super, super high-profile guys that are going to cost you a ton of money. They made some smart decisions, brought back players that actually saved money when it comes down to how the contracts are structured. And then they also added some talent that can be around for the foreseeable future as well, like a player in Justin Reed. So I do think that the Saints have been preparing for this move. So coming up, we're going to tell you what I think the money will look like. But I got to show you this awesome shirt. I mean, it's so fresh. It's a throwback logo. You got the old gold. It looks so clean. Chatsports.com/Saints Rewind. Get the Rewind sweater. It's on clearance, so limited time here. Make sure you click the link that's in the comments or description of this video. Get yourself some swag. Limited availability left. They do have all of the sizes still available at the time of recording this, but you better go quick because they are selling like hotcakes, or like crawfish season, king cakes and Mardi Gras season. You know what I'm saying. They're selling fast. Now let's dive into Chris Olave's contract. This is how I think this whole thing will ultimately shake out. The extension will look like a 3-year, $80 million contract, which would average $26.7 million, and guaranteed I would give him $55 million through the bonuses and all that kind of stuff. I would just straight up be a little bit weary because I do have a little bit of PTSD from the Michael Thomas extension and that contract, but I'm not going to sit here and say to let that absolutely scare you. This is a very good player when he's available, and of course the injury concerns are real. However, if he can stay on the field, he is definitely worth this price tag. And the evaluation, quite honestly, is pretty tough for Chris Olave. I mean, we have to consider a lot of different things here. Over the duration of his 3-year NFL career, he's had some massive turnover in the quarterback department. Between Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, Derek Carr, Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, he's had so many different people throwing him the pill. On top of that, there's been multiple coaching changes, not just at the head coaching spot, but the offensive coordinator, Pete Carmichael, early in his career, and then you had Clint Kubiak last year. Now we're going to get another new scheme and another new head coach, from Dennis Allen to now Kellen Moore. On top of that, he's missed a lot of time due to injury, through concussions, through other injuries over the course of his career. And we really haven't seen his true potential because of all of the things we just listed. The quarterback turnover, the instability, or the lack of stability, I should say, in the Saints coaching room, the injuries, all of those things are things to consider when you're talking about Chris Olave's contract. So it is a little bit tough. So to sum things up, I just want to narrow it down and kind of make this a very easy explanation. You give Chris Olave a 3-year extension on top of his 5th-year option. So the 5th-year option will kick in after the 2020 or after this upcoming season. So he's going into year 4. 5th-year option will be in year 5, obviously. The contract will start at the beginning of the 2027 season. So really, it's a 4-year, $95 million contract when you include the 5th-year option and the 2026 season. So that's just kind of to sum it all up, 4-year, $95 million. That's basically what the contract would entail. And this is pretty similar to what Devontae Smith made. The Eagles, they paid him pretty handsomely after he had a handful of really good seasons. And I kind of cheated a little bit because I wanted to consider the first 3 years, but I just think it's not really fair because of how much time Chris Olave missed. So let's just look at the first 2 years. Side by side, these players are very scary, similar stats. They have the exact same receptions, very similar targets, yards favor Olave, average favors Olave, touchdowns favor Devontae Smith. So I show you this graphic because I think it's a good stepping stone. It's a good reference point of a player that you could compare the contracts to potentially build off of. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I can tell you, imagine if Chris Olave had the structure that the Philadelphia Eagles had. I mean, they put a lot of good support around Devontae Smith. They brought in a very dominant X receiver in A.J. Brown in 2022, and he was actually catapulted into more production after A.J. Brown was brought in. So I think if you set up the New Orleans Saints similar to how the Eagles have constructed their roster with a very dominant offensive line, quality quarterback, and then on top of that, you have a good running game and another receiver on the other side that can be a dominant X player, I think that that could really, really benefit a player like Chris Olave. And for what it's worth, I think that that's actually pretty good news for us Saints fans because I'm having a hard time remembering. Who was the coach that just won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, and he was doing the offense with the Eagles, and now he's the head. Oh, yeah, Kellen Moore, your head coach. So I think you have a good reference points there. So I will say this. You have multiple quarterbacks on rookie contracts, so this is an opportunity for the New Orleans Saints to truly invest in their offense and give the young quarterback tools to succeed. So give them a really good wide receiver group. Give them a strong tight end squad. On top of that, if the offensive line doesn't shake out this year, you got to continue to invest there. And I know that they've invested heavily in the offensive line, so hopefully, fingers crossed, it all finally works out. And if that does, then all you have to do is invest in all of the skill positions around the quarterback, and you can really, really, really see some success in the offense for New Orleans. That's been the recipe for success for a lot of teams over the past handful of seasons, is a young quarterback on a rookie contract with plenty of investments around him to maximize the contract and maximize the talent. So how much would you pay Chris Olave? Get down in the comment section. I want you to be GM Mickey Loomis and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to Saints Now. We're going to be live with James Skermetta, 6 p.m. today, Central Time. Turn on your noties, and we will see you there.